Hi guys, we're going to be looking at function transformations. The first thing we're going to look at is this form because it's very helpful for all functions, okay, from linear to square root and everything in between. Okay. Now, all of your functions can end up having this form or a very similar form. Okay, so first let's talk about the benefits and then we'll look at some examples. All right. First of all, if, right, normally you have here a value up front that is positive, okay, and very standard is a 1 value. If you happen to have a negative value up here in the front, okay, and, let me go and see if I can change the color here. Okay. If you have a negative up front, you're going to say it's a reflection off of the x-axis. Okay? End of story. Next, this value, if, okay, let me go a different color now. If this value here is a 1, that's standard. Okay, no transformation. Okay, but if it's bigger than 1, you're going to say that it is a vertical stretch. Okay, of whatever number's there. Let's say, okay, of whatever number's here. Okay, if this number here is smaller than 1, okay, but bigger than 0, just a number, do not look at the negative sign, okay, then you can say it's a vertical compression. Of whatever number is there. Okay. Next, we're going to look at this guy. Okay. If, okay, you have plus any number, okay, bigger than 0, okay, you're going to claim that it is a horizontal shift of whatever numbers here. So if it's like plus 2, you can say plus 2, whatever. Okay. Now, okay. So again, the number is bigger than 0. Okay. On this one, if the number is less than 0, okay. So if they put a minus 2, then you're going to say it's also a horizontal shift of that number, okay, in that case minus whatever, okay? And specifically, you do want to include here for this one, okay, that it's actually left, and for this one you want to claim that this is right. Okay. Now I will prepare you. This is interesting because here you'll have a positive number, or you'll be moving left, believe it or not. Okay, it's a little counterintuitive. That's what you want, good notes. And here, if it's a negative number, You might think left, but you're actually moving right. Okay? And lastly, this guy is a lot more familiar to you guys. Okay? If this number is bigger than 0, this now would be a vertical shift. Okay? Of that number. Okay? Now, of course, to be bigger than 0, it'd be positive, so here you can say up, which is what you would think, right? Because it's positive. Unlike this one here, it's a little counterintuitive. This was exactly as you would think. And at the same time, if this number is less than 0, it's a vertical shift of that number, okay, that negative number, and it would go down. Okay? So you should have that written down. Now let's look at some examples. Okay? So you already know how this operates. Let's look at some examples. Let's say you're looking at a linear function. You would have an exponent there of 1. Okay? If you were looking at a quadratic, you'd have an exponent there of 2. Okay? If you were looking at a cubic, you would be looking at an exponent of 3 there. Okay? If you were looking at absolute value, you'd have the signs right up in there. Okay? And lastly is square root. You would have the sign right up in there. Okay? So that is the basics. Okay, it looks like a lot's going on, but it's very helpful. So let me pick out some functions here. Let's look at y equals x. You guys are very familiar with this. Okay? Now, of course, I need that form, right? Just like this. Okay? Now here I have a 1 up front, so that's where that goes. Back here I don't have anything, so I'll add a 0 in there. And I need to add something else that will still give me x, so I'll put a 0 in there. And now I have the form, and I can declare the transformations. Let's look at y equals x squared plus 2. Somebody from the quadratic family. Okay. Once again, I need this form of blank x plus 0. Whoops, excuse me. It should be a blank plus blank. Okay. Now, once again, I have a 1 up front, so I'll put a 1 up here. Okay. Now I do notice I have a square, so the square goes up there for quadratic. I have a plus 2, but notice that it's not inside the square, right? So inside the square there's nothing, I'll put a 0. Outside the square there's a 2. Okay? So that's where I would apply the instructions from the transformations from above. Now let's take a look at a cubic. Okay? Here, okay, once again, right in front of the x is a 1, so I'll put a 1 there, plus something, this is a cube, plus something at the end, okay? So, I notice that now inside the cube is a minus 3, so I'll put a negative 3, and what else do I notice? That there's nothing outside of that, so I can simply put in a 0, so nothing changes. Okay. Let's take a look at, what am I missing? Absolute value. Okay. Now there are some exceptions, but for the sake of this assignment, this should be sufficient. Okay, I do need something here. X plus blank plus something out here. Okay. Now here we're going to put the absolute value signs in there. And as I can see, right, there's a 5 up front, so he will go and place them up here. There's nobody being added inside or outside, so I'll put zeros. Okay, and I kind of jumped the gun there, should have been blank, but I can fill it in with a 0. And lastly, let's take a look at a square root. Okay, we're going to have 5 x minus 4 plus 2. Okay, let's go and set up kind of the skeleton plus something plus something. Okay, up front is the 5 as we can see, and before that the square root. Okay, as indicated earlier, we'll squeeze in there. So now we've got the 5 up front. We have the minus 4 in here, and we have the plus 2 at the end. So that one, although it looked tougher, it's actually a lot easier to put in this form. Thank you for your time.